Hi, friends. Welcome to Magnify. I'm Brooke Walker. We are delighted, we really are, to welcome Sister Jean Bingham to the podcast today, a special guest and a force for good who we want to get to know a little bit better and learn from her many varied experiences, serving, loving, and being a bold ambassador for our faith around the world. Though she needs no introduction, we'll share just a fraction of her life as a setup to this conversation to come. Sister Bingham served as General President of the Relief Society of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from 2017 to 2022. A year after her release, she and her husband Bruce were called to serve in the Belgium Netherlands mission as government relations representatives, assigned to the European Union and International Affairs Office of the Church in Brussels. She and Bruce are the parents of 2 daughters and were also foster parents to teens and children, many of whom have become part of their family. We feel blessed to sit down with her today and learn from her example of how we can express our beliefs effectively in any situation, be it through our words or our actions. Sister Bingham is also the perfect person to teach us how we can confidently articulate our faith so that everyone we know knows how much they are loved by our Heavenly Father. Sister Bingham, welcome to the Magnify podcast.
Thank you very much, Brooke, and I really appreciate your introduction.
Serving as government relations representatives, how would you summarize that as you look back with some distance between that experience and now? What is your overarching impression of that opportunity?
I learned so much. I learned about not only just politics in the European Union, but also how to more effectively share the gospel in very simple ways that were engaging to people.
Yeah. And what a cool opportunity to grow with your spouse in that way, in those unique, policy conversations. And you were both probably learning a lot together.
We were. And one of the fun things I think we learned is that before that, I was in my own sort of leadership area and he was in his own leadership area. So here we have these 2 executives, shall we say. And then where do we find the middle ground, the Venn diagram?
You had 2 cooks in the kitchen.
So we did. So it was really kind of interesting to have that development of our relationship during that time.
How did it change you 2 as a couple, would you say?
Much more I can't say much more, but really united.
Yeah.
We really understood one another, I think, and made some communication changes that helped us to become more harmony.
Which is neat to think that growth continues to happen, right? Even
it
after
sure does.
How many years of marriage?
53.
53. That's fantastic. Yeah. I do want to hear a little bit more about that experience, but I guess I want to start with one of the more recent adventures you have, which took you to Zimbabwe in January. Can you tell me about that trip?
That was amazing. We were invited by some very dear friends who do a lot of humanitarian work in Zimbabwe. It also was the week of the Harare, Zimbabwe Temple Open House.
Amazing.
And so we had the real opportunity, amazing opportunity to go there. And I think it really brought home to me how you can share the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the world in any situation. I should tell you a little bit about these women. They're pro golfers that started a foundation some years ago because they saw so much need. One is from South Africa, one is from Zimbabwe, and they have another dear friend who's also a pro golfer from Norway. And the 3 of them started this foundation. And they started out by saying, what can we do to help? There's so many people who, for instance, who have congenital cataracts. So they started bringing doctors that could help that. And then as they went out to the different villages out in the bush, they said, there's so many needs. We can't just do one thing. And so, of course, they started sharing donations that they had brought for medical equipment and baby kits and hygiene kits, all those kinds of things, school supplies. And so it's been, I don't know how many years now for them, but they have done a remarkable work in sharing what they have with those who have very little.
And that all started with the question, how can I help? Which is such a woman's way, isn't it? To see
Very
a little
much.
Need, and then it grows from there.
Very much.
Can you take us to the Zimbabwe Temple Open House through your lens and through your view? What was that like?
It was beautiful. Every temple is just a little bit different, of course, because they want to personalize or localize the decorations. So you saw these bright, beautiful African colors. We went through with a small group that included a representative from Botswana, one from Gaborone, one from Zambia, and a couple from China. And as Elder Sikahima, who was a guide, I should say, did a beautiful job of making it a personal experience for each one of them, and they could ask questions and he could answer them and open the floor to the rest of us who were there in that small group. And it was just a beautiful experience. You know, every temple you go in has the Spirit of the Lord there. And when it's an open house, there's this sense of expectation and excitement. They can hardly wait to actually do the work. So they're telling the people about what's going to happen. I have to tell you about this. One of this woman in Zimbabwe who does a lot of this work out in the African bush to the school, she visits 40 or something schools every week or 2 weeks, and she teaches them about the gospel. She has been talking about the temple with all of these students and their teachers for some time, and she invites them to come to the open house. And so she says, if you will arrange for a bus to bring your students, I will pay for the bus when you get there. And so you see all these students in their uniforms of different colors, and they're all lined up, and they're going through the temple just so quietly, and just so they will never have seen anything like that in their entire lives. Most of them had never even been out of the bush. They've just stayed in their small area there because there's no buses, there's no transportation.
Yeah.
You walk everywhere. So to get on a bus, come to the capital city of Harare, and then go through the most beautiful building they have ever seen. Can you imagine what that felt like to them? It was remarkable. They would just come out beaming.
I'm experiencing just those feel-good spiritual goosebumps, thinking of the reverence they must have carried, not just as you described for that grand experience of travel and adventure, but also for that dear woman who had prepared them for that moment to walk through the house of the Lord. And I did want to ask, what was the energy like among the saints who now had a temple that they could worship in and serve in?
Just total excitement.
Yeah.
They would have to, before that, travel quite a distance to go to any other temple. I think the closest one at the time would be Johannesburg, South Africa. And so to have them right close within their own country, it was just remarkable.
Well, you have had so many, speaking of the word remarkable, you've had so many remarkable experiences through your service. And I'd love to, as we detail a few of these opportunities and see those opportunities through your lens, learn from you, Sister Bingham, on how you have found over the years the courage to use your voice in such bold ways. I mean, thinking of just the international travel alone is intimidating enough for me, but you've learned to articulate your beliefs and your faith through these experiences in marvelous ways. And in your recent capacity serving as a government relations representative, you focused on three main topics. You focused on freedom of religion, family values, and humanitarian assistance. As I think of each of those topics, I mean, big in their own right, but collectively they seem like building blocks, really, for seeing each other as equally important in the eyes of God. Talk about these topics and how you were able to view them through a godly lens.
I love the way you put those together. That really is exactly what the hope is that each one of those are common interests of many, many people. And so that's the thing that I think we did first, is we learned to look for those common interests. And so certainly strengthening families is really critical and important to everyone. We know that's the foundation of strong nations. And so everyone we met, of course, was very interested in strengthening families.
So throughout your service, I know your goal was to make connections, and these were unifiers, right, in those relationships that you set out to bridge.
Yes, those were really important unifiers because everyone feels good about families. Everyone wants to have strong families. One of the things that we did when we met with members of parliament or ambassadors throughout the world, the very first thing we do is, of course, do our homework. We would come prepared with a common interest or beliefs to begin the conversation. So, for instance, freedom of religion or belief, everyone wants that. Strengthening families and humanitarian aid and support, of course, that's a need all over the world. And so when we talk about those things, of course, we'd listen attentively, and then we would respond with validation that demonstrates our respect.
But what a good icebreaker that any woman could grab onto, in the sense that I'm not speaking at the United Nations, but if I'm going into a ministering opportunity or if I'm teaching a Relief Society lesson, identifying that commonality that would unify everybody in the room, everybody in the conversation. That's a good opening strike.
Exactly. And when you respond with respect, that just builds a relationship even more. I think the other thing is we express appreciation for their viewpoint. It may not be the same as ours, but we can find something good. There's always something good that you can express appreciation for in their viewpoint.
And it might not mean agreement always.
Exactly.
But appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that distinction.
There are always ways that you can validate that without...
yes. Taking a position or a side necessarily.
Very good.
Yeah.
I think another thing that we did to demonstrate our sincere desire to have relationships was to attend their events. We often invited them, of course, to events that we sponsored, but we would always try and attend their events. For instance, I'm thinking about a group that we worked with. They were all different religions, Baha'is, Lutheran, Catholic, Muslim, Hindu, and they would have different events. We would make sure that we went to their events and expressed our appreciation for their efforts. We'd always find something, and there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things in every religion that we can find that are comfortably common to all of us.
I love that. You're taking me back to a few years ago. I had the joy of serving in one of the best callings of the church, the Sunbeams.
Oh.
And we were talking about being a friend, right, and extending friendship. And I do remember the topic of inviting friends to church came up. And one cute little eager 4-year-old in the front row, we were saying, and you can invite a friend to church. And he said, and what do we say if they invite us to their church? I mean, that give and take, right, at a higher level does higher things. But that basic idea of what I'm asking of you, I can give of myself to.
Oh, that's a great example of that. I like that.
Talk to me about navigating your role, representing beliefs and faith to people who might not be familiar with your beliefs and faith. How did you seek out ways to do that organically and naturally and sincerely?
You know, we had a lot of opportunities to do that when we visited ambassadors. There were 183 embassies, I think, in Brussels at the time. So all these ambassadors from all over the world were there. So there's a real variety of people. And one of the things we always did was use the full name of the church. And not only that, but say it actually kind of clearly and distinctly with emphasis of Jesus Christ.
I have to slow myself down all the time. It's such a familiar phrase, right? But I love that challenge to emphasize the really point of the title, which is Jesus Christ.
Once we do that, it takes away from the uncomfortable feeling of, we just hurry and get that over with. That's not what we want to do. We want to emphasize that Jesus Christ is our head, that he is the one that we follow. Our focus is on him as the head of our church. I think another thing that we would do is to be transparent. When we would visit the ambassadors, for instance, we would tell them how many members of the church were in their country, where they met to worship. We would identify if there was a temple in the country and its location and the purpose, of course. We would inform them that the local citizens are the leaders of the church in their congregations. And then, of course, we'd ask for questions and we would answer them. And if we didn't know the answer, we'd tell them, we'd find out and let them know.
And what was the benefit of that transparency, did you find, to lay out those facts, figures, intents ahead of time?
Some of the ambassadors, when it came to visit them, were very skeptical. What do you want? What is your ask? And we would be very transparent about it. We would tell them that our church never goes in the back door, that we always are authorized by the government to come in and set up congregations, etc. And so they felt comfortable they could trust us. I think you're setting that focus on trust. Okay, if I tell you everything, then I don't have to worry that you're going to come back later and tell me something that's inaccurate.
That's so wise, and I'm thinking how that might trickle down to the average, woman in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in those relationships and conversations. I think that does require a little bit of forward-leaning energy, right? Where we have to be willing and open to express, on a lower level, our beliefs or our commitments. Those have to come out just naturally and openly, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Another thing that we would do is we would reinforce the church's apolitical stance. Some of them would ask if we support this or that political position, and we stress that we have members throughout the world, and we don't take sides in any conflicts. Of course, that we abhor war and contention. We are advocates of peace, which really leads to prosperity for all.
And how did people respond to that message?
It was interesting. I think some of them took a deep breath, and others were a little bit disappointed because we wouldn't take their side. But that's natural. But the more we talked, the more we told them the purpose. For instance, we would talk about the humanitarian efforts of the church in their country. We would be very open and transparent. We'd say, how much money has the church donated to your country? What kinds of projects? Where are they located? Who are the partners? Who do we work with in your ministries? They knew everything that we knew. And I think that helped them to understand when we said, we do this because we love God, and because we love God, we also love His children. And that's the basis, that's a purpose, that's why we do this. And I think it disarmed them to know that we had no other motive in line.
Laying out your why is such a powerful connection, isn't it? It demonstrates vulnerability. It demonstrates that trust that you talked about. But I love that your why became part of the conversation. As I'm sitting here marveling at you just talking so easily and confidently about how you navigated these big conversations, I found myself thinking, how much of that confidence do you feel came from training or preparation, which I know you take that seriously? How much of it came from experience, and how much of it came from godly support and inspiration? Can you speak to that a little bit?
All three of those, certainly.
All three boxes checked.
I can't tell you exactly how much of each one,
Sure.
But certainly experience. During my callings, I've had to learn to be forward in my expressions. I think the first visit we went to an ambassador, I was a little intimidated. And then you realize they are just people just like you and I, and they are doing their job, and what they want more than anything is to represent their country well. And so if I can understand that, then I can communicate with them, and again, give them that respect, give them that opportunity to share whatever they want to share.
I want to ask you this, and it might take a little thinking, and so we can take a pause if that is needed. But I was reminded, Sister Bingham, of something that Sharon Eubank said about you.
I love her.
Don't we all? We
Yes,
all
we do.
claim,
We all do.
love, and respect Sharon Eubank.
Yes.
She's been on this podcast a couple of times, but she served as your counselor in the General Relief Society presidency, and I know you've worked with her on occasion over the last several years through policy and humanitarian opportunities. But after you were called, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to maybe put a pink blush on your cheeks, but I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. She said this about you. She said, the first week that our presidency was called, right after General Conference, Sister Bingham got the assignment to go to the United Nations. So she's bundled up on a plane and she shows up at the United Nations. And as I sat in the audience as her companion, I watched her articulate compassionate, strong social skills, full of faith in Jesus Christ, completely unafraid. And I thought, that's my Relief Society. And I was so proud. Now, I reference that kind compliment and smart observation about you because I've observed that sometimes women draw confidences from each other and each other's experiences. So while I know you're a humble woman, I'm going to invite you to be self-reflective for our benefit. Can you think of a moment when you realized that if you were willing to go, to do, to testify, if you were willing and you put in that preparation, God would lift you and God would strengthen your voice? Can you think of a specific time when you've experienced that lift or that strengthening through the power of God?
Or just the one that you mentioned. I remember that was 10 days after we were set apart, that we were giving that opportunity. And I just thought, I have to do what the Lord wants me to do, and He will support me if I do. And that was exactly that kind of a feeling. I was very calm. I was able to express the message, the statement that we had been asked to deliver, and it was not difficult, if that makes sense, because that's not my nature.
I was going to ask, is that in you? Is that part of your personality? No.
No, I'm not I'm really more of a retiring, private, reserved type of person, but I knew that was part of my job. The Lord trusted me. I don't know why. Don't know why I was ever called, but the Lord trusted me to do that, and I knew that He would support me if I did my part.
And what was your part then in those big moments? I mean, you've prayed at the White House, you spoke at the United Nations, you've attended and hosted European Parliament sessions. How did the Lord prepare you for these kinds of experiences on a big stage, and how did you lean into that preparation?
Well, certainly prayer and Scripture, those kinds of things where you get those drops of oil of your testimony and they strengthen you, and watching other people do it beautifully. I can't tell you how many women I've admired who have done that, who have been bold enough in a very strong way, have expressed their testimonies of the gospel of Jesus Christ, their love of his work.
There's something to that, isn't it? Looking at women we know, love, and admire through that lens of courage and bravery and faith. I think that's why family history is so powerful, because we can look back at women in our own family tree and say, if she did it, so can I.
Mm-hmm. I have all of my, I think 16 of my great-great-grandparents are members of the church, back in before Nauvoo, some of them. And I know some of those stories. And so I say, as you said, if they can do it, then I need to do it. They've given me that legacy of faith and trust.
So when the flutters set in, aside from a sincere prayer, is there anything else you tell yourself in that moment that allows you to square your shoulders and step forward with boldness and faith?
Do you know, I think it's a gift. I remember my first conference talk. I really thought I would just drop right at the pulpit and I just quit breathing. That'd just be the end of that right there.
I have wondered if that's ever happened, because that I will never know, but that would be my sentiment too.
But what happened, and I've had other sisters tell me the same thing, it's almost like a bubble comes over you, and you get up and you walk down and you give your talk and you see all these people who want you to do well. They are waiting, they are friends, and that's how you feel. And then you come back up to your seat and you sit down and the bubble disappears.
So you feel it. You feel
really
this power of protection.
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And what is that? The comfort of the Spirit? And
it absolutely is.
Yes, in those moments.
He's there with you, because when you start thinking about millions of people are listening, millions of people are counting on you to do this marvelous instruction, it can be intimidating.
I mean, my heart starts beating sometimes when I think about raising my hand in Relief Society, so I can't even imagine. But I think any woman who has experienced the lift that you described or the strength that you described, does it give you then encouragement to try again, do it
Absolutely.
again, say it again?
Yes. It gives you confidence. It's never, for me, it's never easy, but I do have that experience, and that gives you some confidence that it can go well again with the Lord's help.
So translating that to the women listening, what are some ways you would like to see us step up and use our voices in bold and faithful ways to more naturally, perhaps, or easily testify of Jesus Christ on the daily?
You know, one of the things that we did with the ambassadors is we took church publications and we would share them. For instance, the Articles of Faith, we would talk about how the church fosters obeying, honoring, and sustaining the law in every country that you're in. So we give them a copy of the Articles of Faith in their native language. We gave them a copy of For the Strength of Youth pamphlet because, you know, youth need guidance in making critically important decisions at this time in their lives, and everyone recognized that. So in order to help them become productive and happy citizens, this will be helpful. I think there's a lot of things like that that we can use that we don't really think about. It was really interesting that those kinds of things were accepted very readily.
Did that surprise you?
In some ways, yeah. We never had any pushback. As a matter of fact, they were always, oh, thank you. Wow, this is interesting. I can't wait to read this more clearly, more carefully. There's something else. There's a booklet called Muslims and Latter-day Saints. You may be familiar with it. It is published by the church, and it highlights common areas of belief and practice among Muslims and Latter-day Saints. And when we visit with ambassadors from majority Muslim countries, we would always hand them this, and we'd talk a little bit about that. Again, that's finding your common ground.
The commonality.
The church has so much in common. And so I think that's maybe one of the things that women in any area you can find something in common with someone else.
I have reached for this quote more times than I can count, and probably said it on this podcast too many times, so apologies in advance, but I believe it was President Uchtdorf who said, we have more in common than we have differences. Yeah. I think of that often. And while I don't find myself in very many polarizing situations necessarily, I think of that as I'm trying to connect with my neighbor next door, as I'm trying to connect with that woman in Relief Society, that commonality. I'm so glad that you're drawing attention to it, because it does go far in forming those relationships, and I think ultimately giving us the confidence to speak up in those dynamics too.
There are even things like quotes from General Conference. You know, when you read something, ooh, that sister, that woman, I think she would appreciate this, and so you just send her a little paragraph, a little quote, and say, I thought of you when I read this morning. Those kinds of things.
Simple, easy, pass along.
Simple, easy, pass along. It doesn't take a lot of time, or it doesn't get deep into the doctrine, but it's an invitation to feel the Spirit.
I'm always so impressed to learn I'm talking to a seminary teacher, because I think seminary teachers pack a lot. They have to be smart and engaging. They have to be brave and vulnerable. So I wasn't surprised to learn you taught seminary. And because I'm assuming it did, I'll just jump to this question. How did teaching teenagers the gospel prepare you to preach the gospel in more sophisticated spaces and places?
You know, as you said, teaching teenagers, you have to be engaging.
Yes.
And you have to give them new things that they don't know.
Yes.
And they're more interested in that. So I think that helped me to prepare, because you have to explain things clearly without jargon, in vocabulary that the children understand, that the youth understand. It's simple.
Yeah.
And then you ask for clarification.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the great preparations actually for teaching, is trying to explain things in a simple way that everyone can understand.
And knowing that simple is okay, because as I think of not just sophisticated places, but even formal places where you're invited perhaps to step up. I mean, it could be as basic as, testimony meeting, but sometimes we feel like we have to say something profound, or we have to say something to match the moment. But to be confident in simple statements or simple truths, I appreciate you validating that that's enough.
Absolutely.
Let's focus in on a word that we've kind of sprinkled in to this conversation, but confidence, right? It's one thing to be bold, and it's one thing to express something with faith, but let's talk about how we can do that with real confidence, godly confidence.
I think the confidence comes from being prepared.
Okay.
Like I said, doing your homework, of course.
Yes.
And having the Spirit with you. I'm thinking about the a roundtable discussion that I moderated in Brussels. I was on the power of partnerships to accelerate the well-being of women and children. As you know, that was an initiative that the Relief Society came out with in 2023, I believe.
And this roundtable happened last year?
This happened in Brussels in 2024.
Okay.
And my favorite, wonderful Sharon Eubank, who is the executive director of the humanitarian efforts of the church, was one of the highlights on this panel. And, of course, we had other people, the international representatives from the World Food Program and from UNICEF and from Save the Children, who are great partners with the church. And the church has learned to work with these people on really important initiatives. But I watched how each one of those participants, they knew the background of their topic. They knew the statistics. They knew the impact that their organization had had on the issue at hand.
They were ready.
They were ready. They also knew they could not do it alone. I think maybe those are the two things. You can certainly share with confidence, but another part of confidence is recognizing what you don't know, and that you cannot do everything alone, that you need partners. You need to work with people. One of the things we did was to share relevant quotes from authoritative church sources. Our real authority was President Camille Johnson. And we gave each participant a bookmark gift that had a quote on it about the importance of women and children. If you meet their needs, then the whole world basically can grow, which is marvelous. And I love this. Another one, she said this: "We are grateful for the privilege to be engaged in helping God's children. As followers of Jesus Christ, we strive to embrace his two great commandments, to love God and our neighbor. With the generous support of church members and friends, we embrace the opportunity to do the things that he would do if he were here." Very simple, but yet it focuses on
Jesus Christ,
our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And there was not one person there who felt irritated or intimidated, offended by that comment. So I think if we can do that kind of a thing with sincerity and confidence, people accept them very readily.
And there's another good word, sincerity, right? Mm-hmm. Leading with that agenda off the table and just pure heart, pure love of Christ, kind of leading the conversation, leading the relationship.
You know, of all the visits we had with ambassadors, I think we only had one in the 2 years and we did a lot of them, that was kind of pushing back.
A little tense.
And even countries that you would assume would be challenging, they were very, very warm and wanted to know once they realized that our give was sincere and we were not asking anything in return. As a matter of fact, we would tell them where the money was coming from for all these gifts, which is members and friends of the church throughout the world. Each person getting a little bit, and you'd combine all those little bits in order to be able to accomplish something really amazing all together. And just that whole concept of we're working together was something that opened people's hearts and doors.
I could listen to you talk and share these experiences all day long. It's been so enriching and so inspiring, really. Maybe we end and land here. I was thinking about the curious opportunity you've had to represent the church and Jesus Christ all over the world. And it's a curious opportunity in that you're in a different country with different people, different cultures, and yet your message is the same. Your testimony is the same, one God. How have these experiences, or what have these experiences taught you about the love of that one God?
That he truly does love every single one of his children. He wants all of us to come home. Our job is to share his message of love so that others feel that and they also want to come home. We were given the assignment to go to Poland and present a statement for the church at a conference on freedom of religion or belief. And again, the message was just the same as if we had given to any other, but it was warmly welcomed because they had that same feeling. We went to a conference in Croatia on strengthening families. And again, we gave the same message that we give to anyone else, but because that was an issue that they resonated with, it opened doors and hearts. And we just happened, we went to Romania. We're in an interfaith panel with people from different religious organizations. And again, the same message, but when it's given with sincerity, with the church's beautiful words and the Spirit, that's what opens hearts and doors.
So in conclusion, for the woman listening, she can do it.
She can absolutely do it. Every one of us have that capacity. The Lord expects us to, actually. As President Russell M. Nelson said to all of us, this is the most important thing that we need to do is gather Israel. And how do we do it? Every day by just sharing our testimonies in our words, in our deeds, and everywhere we go, in our own homes, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, in our workplace, wherever we are, we can bring the light of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Sister Bingham.
Thank you, Brooke.
Our sincere thanks to today's guest, Sister Jean Bingham, and thank you for listening and being part of the Magnify Sisterhood. For more conversations and uplifting messages, we hope you'll join in on Instagram. We'll see you there. Until next time.